don't like use their resources, right? And they're just like, yeah, we're gonna walk. I was like, there are 3 better options than walking through this creepy infested land, but you do you. So
Speaking of walking through creepy and infested, welcome to the Dresden Files podcast. You can support us on
Segue work
patreon.com/broken doors. What?
It just makes me think, no doubt, sorry, I'm not home right now. I'm out walking in the spider webs. So leave a message and I'll call you back. Just saying.
People don't leave voicemails anymore.
Yeah, no, this song is very old. You probably know this. So
people don't, call people anymore at all. Unless you really have to.
Spam callers, like spam robocallers.
This is most of the calling that we do. So yeah. Way more, face to face with the cameras and the zooms. Yeah.
Well, close enough.
Still, your face is there and then my face is here. So, it's pretty close. Anyway, White Knight, part 2. We're picking up at the start of chapter 7. We're still in Jim's, laying down the mystery, types of stuff. We had just met with the Ordo, who Dresden, through a chain of events, says, he went to go investigate a quote unquote suicide that Murphy's guts told her wasn't. Dresden found a clue that only wizards could have found, that kind of said something else is going on. This is probably a different thing. They linked the body to this organization called Ordo Lebes, the dark cooking pot, or cauldron, as it probably is meant to be, and then they went and met with them. So among the things that Dresden found out is that he's implicated, but also his brother is implicated because people with a gray cloak have been seen with several of the victims, and then some other kind of pretty boy, matching Thomas's description to a T pretty much, is also involved. So Dresden's big mad about this. I think those are the important.
He's been bamboozled, but he hasn't figured that part out yet. But
sure, yeah, I mean, a couple of different ways. Like he knows in his gut that it's not true, but because he has to entertain the possibility that it might be true, and his emotions are conflicting with his logic, he's mad. Yes. And
he very conveniently sets off the bomb early.
Well, spoilers, but yes. So,
but yeah, general Dresden's vibe in this whole book is kind of like big match, annoyed at all times.
Right, and I mean, I think the subtext there is that this is him leaning on Lash, right, and this is where like people have had concerns and stuff like that for a while, right? We get Deadbeat, 2 books ago, we got the alphas, Billy and Georgia being like, hey, you've been kind of weird lately, is everything okay upstairs, type of thing. But now this is where we very much, it's already happened in world, it hasn't entirely been explained yet, but we start to get Camp Kaboom, which we'll get later this book, but it's already happened. And so like even Ramirez is like, I think you've blown a fuse somewhere, my dude. And that's not going to get better once we proceed into the duel and everything. So yeah, I mean, this is all ties back to Lash, I think, and his leaning on the shadow for power. So anyway, so let's see. Oh, right.
So did Lash know that that there was a bomb, and to like be annoyed, set it off a little bit early to protect? Or
this
was
might
it
be
just coincidence?
This might be stupid coincidence. Like, I mean, even like as a subconscious entity, like Harry would have had to have seen or heard or smelled something, right? So like she doesn't, I guess she's got some of his magical senses too, because we'll see that scene here in like 5 minutes if we ever get there. But like she's still got to be able to get stuff in. She's not supernatural in the sense that she can like, go beyond his own senses and stuff. So it might be just like a happy accident, and that's how Harry treats it, for most of the book anyway. I forgot my copy here. That chapter 6 gets cut off. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. It's like they're going down the elevator. Karen's kind of pushing him, but trying to be polite. It's like, look, I know you love your brother. I don't hate Thomas. We just got out of the Never Never storming Mab Citadel, but it's possible, even if it was Thomas, somebody's got him somehow, right?
Cat's
Manipulation, just something, right? So he may actually legitimately be, involved. So, So anyway, he reaches down with all his negative energy and tries to ground it out literally by wiping it off on the ground, more or less, these magical energies. And that goes down, 100, 200 feet and sets off the bomb in Murphy's Saturn, which maybe he was going to hex out the engine anyway. So who knows? But yeah, basically, explosion, and it lifted me up off the ground and dumped me on the sidewalk several feet later. My shoulder clipped a mailbox as I went by it, and I had a good steady view of the clear summer sky above me as I lay on my back and ached, which is just like, there's just so much room for like a slow motion, like, everybody getting blasted back, and then Harry's like, blue sky, birds, and then lands on his back and just like, ow.
Just play like some calm, peaceful music there, and then it starts fading back in with the whining in the ears and
right
everything,
and sirens, and just the sound of pain and aching.
Right. Yeah. So many good songs. Like, I mean, if there's room for it, Mad World is always great. You can put that in there. Maybe we can save that for the trailer or something and just be like, people who don't know, and then they're like, oh God, does he make it? So. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so lots of fun back and forth with Murphy and Dresden. So couldn't help it. I started laughing like a drunk. Well, under the circumstances, I'm forced to conclude that you were right. I am a control freak, and you were 100% right to be the one driving the car. Thank you, Murph.
So who did this? Who did the
Well,
the
we
car
don't know
bombing?
yet. This is the building of the suspense. No, that's not true. So there's very, very strong indication that it's Grey Cloak that's done it later, but we haven't gotten there yet. So,
but isn't that Vittorio?
Yeah.
So Grey Cloak's Vittorio,
which
and
we also haven't gotten there yet. So
yeah, I'm just tracking. It's in the who's the one who's pretending to be Priscilla?
That's the Scavis.
Okay, and they're okay.
And then there's Magical Wraith, who also has started feeding on fear, but he's still technically a wraith or whatever. So
he could have
like sex and fear together.
Could have, but if we get there, some of the reading that I did this time is that when Harry follows Grey Cloak through Little Chicago, he finds a spider hole and he gets kicked out by Cowl. And they discuss how, there would be scents and some other things there that they could potentially track. And Harry basically says, don't count on it. He's probably already blown it up. And, Murphy's like, great, fire, another burning building. What are the chances that the bomb matches the one in my car? And then it's a great moment that I've got in my notes too, because Molly's like, not his fault. It wasn't my fault. This building's on fire and it's not my fault, but it's such a great, because like all three of them at the same time were like, yeah, we get it. A building burned down. It wasn't your fault, because Harry's apparently got a complex about this. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. So it was probably Vittorio. That helps and makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. It's strong conjecture at this point, but Murphy can't be involved in the investigation because she's supposed to be a civilian right now, and she's going to draw attention to the fact that the bomb that was used in her car is also the bomb that just blew up this random building, and they're going to be like, what do you know, detective? So yeah, that's going to be a problem. So
her insurance rates must be absolutely astronomical.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you'd think that there'd be some kind of like police discount or something, but But yeah, this is one of those buddy cop movie things that we don't have to worry about. So, But anyway, Dresden whines about his shoulder, and Murphy's like, "My God, you're such a whiner, Dresden." It's like her car just blew up. She probably got thrown twice as far because physics. So, so Dresden decides he's going to, take the L train back to his apartment, and gets.
Did you put emphasis on that on purpose?
Not really, but it works. So, so he gets back, and Mouse and Mister are there to greet him and everything. So let's see. Yeah, so we get him gearing up montage, whatever. I think he's talking to Mouse, and he's like, "Hang on, I need to get the arsenal." So he puts on his torturously warm duster. I figured I could take death from heat prostration to whole new levels, given the potential prescience of further firebombs. So, but it'd be a Darwin Award not to have it. That's called positive thinking. So, but then he talks about his new and improved shield bracelet. His 3 silver rings, blasting rod, mouse, and staff, and tromps out to the car, which he spends several chapters scanning for bombs for some reason. So yeah, he does the whole scanning thing and everything. So
you just had that kind of trauma. I think you're just gonna. It's better safe than sad.
I mean, really, the fact that he hasn't been doing it already with the Red Court War on, that's kind of wild to me. But I mean, it does take them.
Yet graduated to bombs. Yeah, they burned down his building.
Yeah.
But they haven't tried to.
Right.
They also blew up his building again, his office building, and changes just before the apartment. But
yes,
they have not done bombs to him yet.
That's true. Yeah, I think he talks about like some drive-bys and some other stuff, but yeah, because they clearly know where he is, because Ken and Kelly, all the way back in book 3, right? They met him at his apartment. And yeah, it takes them 9 books to figure out Molotov cocktails for his apartment. So it takes somebody truly diabolical and insane like the Ebes, to do it. So
yeah,
but so whatever, it's one of those things in hindsight, but yeah,
it's
funny.
Perhaps does show that the war wasn't about him at all, and the war was just wanting to eradicate the White Council. He was just a premise. It was not his fault, like Shiro said.
Right.
It's just
what a shock that it was all smoke and mirrors and projection and excuses.
Because if they really wanted to, they know where his apartment is. They could have done it. They could have eradicated him in Chicago, and the White Council's like, well, okay, we'll take that loss now, and then just like, we'll be done. Didn't work.
That's fair, right? The White Council will probably be like, wait a minute, you killed the wizard that you were so mad about, so why are we still fighting? So yeah. But so he gets all of this stuff together, and then he goes to Thomas's place first. So he goes in through like a side entrance basically, and just kind of storms past security, and he's doing a whole bunch of stuff to get attention drawn to him, even though he theoretically can't afford that right now. So he goes up to his apartment, and Thomas's apartment was, well, chic. The door opened onto a living room bigger than my entire apartment, which, granted, will never cause anxiety to agoraphobiacs. The walls were painted a deep crimson, and carpeting was a rich charcoal gray. The furniture all matched, from the sofas to the chairs to the entertainment centers, all of it done in stainless steel and black, and a little bit more Art Deco than I would have preferred. He had a TV too big ever to fit in the Beetle, and a DVD player and surround sound, and racks of DVDs and CDs. Anachronistic again.
Oh yeah.
One of the newer video game systems rested neatly on a shelf, all its wires squared away and organized. So what is this? The Xbox One?
Or is the PlayStation? Which one is he?
Yeah, PlayStation 3. I'm just saying timing matters for that. So 2 movie posters decorated the walls: The Wizard of Oz and The Pirates of Penzance. The one with Kevin Kline as the Pirate King. So
PlayStation 3-ish, 2007. So that would be around PlayStation.
Probably. 3. Yeah, it'd be one of those where it was like, didn't that just come out like a week ago and Thomas has already got it somehow?
Or
he'd be one of those.
It's not even out yet. He got an early thing because something safe.
Right.
But Harry can't understand that.
That's true. But it's there for the fans, right? So, yeah. Yeah, I mean Harry reads the paper. He probably knows that there's some
He still gets the
console
ads from
coming
Circuit
and
City, right?
yeah, right. Well, but I'm
They
specifically
won't
thinking
leave him
like
alone.
even if there was a situation where like they were lined up around the block, they would have run an article on it and he'd be like, "Oh, whatever this, new gizmo is must be really wild." So and
Hey,
then he's waiting.
On the plus side, in universe, in 2 years, Circuit City closes.
And then we could switch it to Best Buy, which is
Yeah.
what he's done anyway. So, but all right. So Harry is snooping and, he's going around and everything like that. And then, he goes into the back rooms and realizes, oh, it's a front, or, whatever he calls it. It's a facade, so basically, in the back rooms, his bedroom looks about what Harry would expect, even though it's still too huge and a gigantic bed and everything like that. But the bathroom is really where the disaster is, and everything. So it's just like, oh yeah, he just brings people up front and cleans the one room probably, and then everything else he lives with. And then there's also a guest room which has been turned into a war room, for Thomas, where it's like, tables worth of guns that are in various states of repair and cleaning and ammo and probably grenades and just everything. I apparently didn't grab the description for this, but there's a lot. But it also has an evidence board where there's a bunch of pictures that have been taken that don't have the little police placards, which means he didn't sneak into it after the police did their investigation. He took those pictures before the police even knew about it and had even shown up.
Yeah, he took the pictures, he developed them, print them out, put them on a board, and left.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's there, but yes. So, because he's hiding somewhere else now. So yeah, now Dresden's like, well, shit, I have to take back like a third of those mean things that I said about Murphy and the Ordo and everything. But he's definitely 100% involved in some way. I still don't think he did the murders, but he's still breaking the law and didn't bring me in on it. So, Chapter 8 starts out with security and the CPD coming to confront Harry because you giant dork. Of course they're going to.
Scene in the series, top 3 most funny. I don't know.
It's
really
pretty funny though. It's great in a lot of ways, and it's Dresden using his brain a bunch of different ways, right? So there's greatness here, but I don't think it rates my like top 10. I don't know. So I'm more actiony and quippy than that. Let's be clever and use all the clues that we've just recently gathered to pretend that I'm a gay lover of my brother, Yeah. So, but anyway, one of the clues that he got along those lines is that some woman called and left a voicemail for Thomas, but called him Tomas, that stuff that grows on your toes that you should take baths more often to clean off. But so clearly she knows him somehow and needs something from him and everything. And Dresden's like, well, that's interesting and also a clue. So I'll log that away. And then security shows up and, they kind of go hard at first because they're like, I mean, you got in and everything, which presumably means you've got a key, but the key could be stolen, a bunch of other stuff. And you're not on the list. Right. And so Harry with Mouse basically pretends to be gay for this, and that they've got a situationship, to use new words. We can't use this in the show because that word didn't exist yet, but they're living apart because Tomas needs his space, but he promised that he would take the baby every other weekend, the baby being Mouse. And
that's the most clever part of it, of that baby is Mouse, that versus like just being a gay lover, whatever, but using the dog and how big he is against how perfectly shiny and like soft leather, expensive leather. Like yeah, no, those things don't mix very well.
Sure. Yeah. So they go through with security and, he checks the key. They take Harry's ID and everything like that. They get him added to the list, or no, they don't, because they're like, well, Tomas needs to, add you to the list and everything. So unfortunately, we're going to have to ask you to leave and whatever. And so, Harry really plays it up, and he also like very specifically plays into CPD's, own biases and that sort of thing, because she's still suspicious of it, right? The female officer there is, she didn't fully buy it the way the security guard is like, oh, thank God it's not like an actual incident. I would rather just not, be involved in this at all, right? He bought it entirely. She didn't entirely buy it. So it's kind of funny because as they more or less clear him, Harry's got a legitimate copy of one of the spare keys. It wasn't a copy of a copy. He said his name with the right inflection, and they're pretty sure that Tomas is as queer as a $3 bill and all of that stuff. So security guard says, "Yep, everything's in order here, but unfortunately, we're going to need to ask you to leave." And he's like, "Cool, let me use the bathroom," which he doesn't because he's a liar. Just kidding. But he listens as they go down, the hallway a little bit. And it's like, wait, you buy the story and whatever? It's like an NBA sized gay burglar who works with a dog. The security guard replied, "We'll make sure he's not stealing the fridge when he comes out. If Wraith is missing anything, we'll point him at this guy. We've got him on video. Eyewitnesses putting him at the apartment, a copy of his driver's license, for crying out loud, So so after he like fully closes the door, he goes back to the war room and says, "Take a memo," except, in his brain, to Lash.
Mhm.
And he basically takes snapshots with his eyeballs, right, for everything, so that we can recreate this, crime scene board later. So so then let's see. Yeah, so then he goes back to his apartment, and he's talking to Lash, basically. And while he's doing it, he's also doing some of his physical therapy, which is playing the guitar, which he then inexplicably starts playing like Santana, because apparently Jim Butcher has a thing about Santana. Like with Molly, it's Spanish guitar. With Dresden, it's Santana. Like, just the whole thing. So anyway, so he starts playing it good, and he's like, he does a very, he does a very Michael thing. I get Michael energy off of this. It's like, no, I don't need your help. I want to do it on my own, in my own time. He's very kind of firm with her, and just be like, I'm not selling my soul for guitar lessons. Thank you very much. So
he's heard that story before.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a musician, so I don't know how musicians actually think about it, but it is like, do you want to do it well because someone's helping you, or do you want to do it well because you can actually accomplish it? And also, he's doing it for rehab purposes, and so playing it well doesn't actually fix his hand.
Right. Yeah, the him playing is kind of like how well he plays is incidental to the motions of like just independently working your digits, that you kind of need to do. So yeah, which is the goal. Right. Okay. So he's basically, now he's using Lashiel as a Bob a little bit, right? Where he's using her as an advisor. She recreates the crime scene board in Thomas's room, fully holodeck style, more or less, and Harry muses on this and everything, but for visual sake and everything, right? We get that probably shadowy superimposed over his own apartment, right? He goes through, he's talking about, the different things, the different evidence and everything. But one of the big clues that it gets out of it is that Lash is like, well, there's something else that you haven't considered. And, we talked about this a little bit last time, I think, as well, where there's somebody that was sitting on the couch that you didn't notice, which is really freaking weird, because you're a private investigator and your job is to notice things. And there was a cop with you who's a detective who also didn't notice anything. And, Lash is like, well, yeah. Lash is like, well, to your credit, you had left like 95% of your power outside, so the fact that you noticed anything at all, is kind of impressive. And so this somebody was clearly under a veil one way or another, either fully invisible or at least something to make them not important, kind of like what he did with the werewolf. in full moon, right? So now there's a mystery guest, and now he's mad, but also probably a little scared because it's like, oh shit, what if it was the killer? So A, they probably lied to him to his face, which duh, and B, maybe the killer is there. So he basically tears out of there with the Blue Beetle again. I believe he still scans it for bombs and everything first, and speeds all the way there, more or less. So I parked illegally on the street about a block from Anna Ash's apartment and walked the rest of the way in. I rang buzzers more or less at random until somebody buzzed me in and headed back up the stairs to Anna's apartment. This time, though, I went in armed for bear. I rode up in the elevator. I got out my jar of unguent, a dark brown concoction that stained the skin for a couple of days. I dabbed a finger in it and smeared it lightly onto my eyelids and at the base of my eyes. It was an ointment originally, blah, blah, blah.
Eyeliner.
So, yes.
It gets smudgy, grungy look.
I think Vaseline is the base. So it's like, yeah, you got to like put ash in Vaseline. That's like 2 of the 5 ingredients right there, so that kind of look. But
certainly not going to help him blend in, though.
Yes, no, definitely not. He's going to look like a football player at a minimum, right? So maybe he's gotten his ass kicked a couple times, which is also not true, not untrue. So anyway, internal monologue. He's like, this isn't necessarily going to help me see anything, but it'll help. It'll almost certainly help tip it off. I immediately imagined, like, he says something like, maybe I'll be able to see a telltale shimmer. I'm being a little glib because that's how Archer says it when he's looking for predators. So it's like, oh, there's the invisibility veil, and I didn't see them precisely, but the final sentences here is like, I should at least be able to glimpse any motion that would at least give me an idea of which way to face. So they get out on Anna's floor, and there's a sleep spell in the air, and Mouse kind of twigs to it too, which is, one of these early indications that Mouse is probably something extra. So let's see. Yeah, so Dresden starts thinking about, the differences of sleep magic, and sleep magic's kind of basic like fire magic. It's one of the early things that you learn how to do, and hell, I've done it a bunch of times and whatever. And, if we're trying to avoid the inner monologue, like, it might be good to bring some of that back out, but it's like, have him explain it out loud to Mouse, because he does that shit all the time anyway, right? Whereas Mouse just kind of like looks at him and is like, I'm a dog. You know that, right? You know I'm still a dog.
Yeah, but this dog is human level intelligence.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so he goes through it and talks about how discreet it is and how it's subtle enough that it's gone through all of the thresholds, which is kind of an interesting thing to note as well, is that apparently if it's low powerful and like subtle enough that it can bypass the threshold.
I wonder if it has to do with the intention. Like a fae can cross the threshold as long as it has no ill intent to the person who lives there, right? And so they'd have to leave and then try to come back if they actually do want to hurt them. So if it's like it's like a sleep spell of peace that can permeate. Also, it's an apartment building, and that might also weaken the thresholds.
Yeah, he does talk about that, in some places too, right? So, but yeah. Yeah, so yeah, he does talk about like someone wanted the residents of the floor to be insensible enough not to notice something, but not so out of it as to be endangered should there be an emergency, like the building catching on fire and burning down. Don't look at me like that. It's a lot likelier than you think. And foreshadowing, so. So he goes to Anna's house, and then instead of knocking, this time he's like, and I'll huff and I'll puff, and he blows her ward up. We get a new spell that I don't recognize up till this point anyway, Solvos, and he opens the door and pushes it in because he's expecting a trap. But the thing about traps is that if they're to work, you need to be unawares, right? So yeah, Dresden was ready. He's got his inner monologue talking about his really cool shield bracelet and how, now it can protect him against more things than physical threats. And if he's not even sure if he had tried to do it 2 or 3 years ago that he could have, because it's just that advanced, and he can do all these really cool things and whatever. And prismatic energies solidify into a silver shell, which is kind of cool. And then, green energy from inside the apartment turns into a net and then sparks against his shield, because he got it up in time because he was pretty much holding it ready anyway. So, yeah. So he gets tagged, and then somebody runs one way, and Dresden kind of moves in. He tells Mouse to sick him, more or less, goes after the, cloaked individual, and then Harry takes a couple steps in with his revolver out, and Anna is like standing in the kitchen, and he points the gun at her and is like, don't move, So Mouse goes and sits on this other person, very easily, and he's having conversations with Anna, and it's like, oh, well, we weren't sure we could trust you, so we hired a private investigator. A private investigator. I looked over at the other woman and said, Mouse. My dog, tail waving gently, backed off right away and trotted over to stand beside me. The woman he had been holding down sat up. We get Elaine's description. I'm probably not going to go through it here, but we know what she looks like, more or less. So she's pale and beautiful and, cultish, and she's wearing an Aerosmith t-shirt, and brown leather Birkenstocks, because important. She propped herself up on her elbows. A tendril of wheat-colored hair falling down almost insolently concealed one eye and gave me a wry smile. Hello, Harry. She dabbed her fingers at a little bloody spot on her lower lip and winced, though there was still amusement in her voice. Is that a new staff, or are you just happy to see me?
She does like to make phallic jokes at him.
Yes.
She did that in Summer Night, so...
I gotta imagine it comes with the territory.
Flirting, dude. She likes him.
Yes,
Still.
She does. So, yeah. So, oh my gosh, that's so funny. If it wasn't highly annoying, so I took precautions today, and I was like, I'm gonna make sure. I was going to refresh it and everything, and I made sure to make an edit and everything, and it just signed me out anyway. So that's fun. So there's our bi-weekly reminder that that's a thing. All right, so up through chapter 11, right? So there's a lot of information, right? This being a mystery novel and all of that stuff. More or less, they sit down, they've established bona fides that they know each other and all of that stuff. Dresden gets more of the information that they didn't share him with in the first place, which is that, there have been 36 deaths in multiple cities over the last year. There's like something like 6 to 10 cities, that have been involved, a lot of them on the West Coast and probably heading more east, which is like, wait a minute, I've got a warden commander out there that should be really upset to hear about all this. So that'll be a thing. But they're all talking back and forth, and then Mouse starts growling, which, Dresden always pays attention to because he's really kind of a quiet dog. But they're all sitting there and, just kind of listening. And then it's like, wait, do you smell smoke? Because the building's on fire and it wasn't my fault. So
I was in the vicinity. Definitely had nothing to... Okay, kind of had something to do with me. But,
he had something to do with it.
But, yeah, that's true. I mean, they did know that Dresden went in there, so they were hoping, this was taking a shot at Dresden, 2 for 1, 3 for
Just
1,
like the car
really.
bomb.
Yeah. So, yep. All right. So Dresden goes up to the door and everything, and then he realizes that he's feeling some creepiness on the other side of the door, and he's like, something's waiting for us in the hall. What? Anna said. Elaine looked from Mouse to me and bit her lip. Window? My heart was skipping along too fast. I don't like fire. I don't like getting burned. It hurts, and it's ugly. Might be able to handle the fall, I said, forcing myself to breathe slowly, evenly. But there's a building full of people here, and none of the alarms or sprinklers have gone off. Someone must have hexed them. We've got to warn the residents. Mouse's head whipped around and he stared intently at me for a second. Then he trotted in a little circle, shook his head, made a couple of chuffing sounds, and started doing something I hadn't heard him do since he was a puppy small enough to fit in my duster pocket. He barked. Loud, steady, woof, 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 with the mechanical regularity of a metronome. Now, saying he was barking might give you the general shape of things, but it doesn't convey the scale. Everyone in Chicago knows what a storm warning siren sounds like. They're spread liberally through the Midwestern states that comprise Tornado Alley. They make your usual warning siren sound, but I had an apartment about 30 yards from one once upon a time, and take it from me, that sound is a whole lot different when you're next to it. It isn't an ululating wail. When you're that close to the source, it's a tangible flood, a solid living sonic cascade that rattles your brain against your skull. Mouse's bark was like that, but on several levels. Every time he barked, I swear to you, several of my muscles tightened and twitched as if it hit me with a miniature jolt of adrenaline. I couldn't have slept through half as much racket, even without the odd little jab of energy that hit me like separate charges of electricity with each bark. So it's
We
like I could just
actually,
imagine Dresden just like jumping every time
Everyone
he
jumping.
barks, yeah.
we have those air sirens here too, and we test them every year. And so like I could pretty easily like just put like that sound, but put a bark on it, and it was like it's
Sure.
it's very loud.
Sure.
What
What do you guys
standing in
use
the
them
room
for?
there? Whew. It's a couple of different things. Well, of course, if in case of like war or something, but
Sure.
that's not been relevant since the Second World War. What I have seen it used for like 2 times in my lifetime, other than the test once a year, is both times was a fire where it was like toxic to be outside or potentially toxic.
wow.
So they
Yeah.
blow a warning. They have specific patterns, and you can look it up because you probably can't remember, and it will tell you what it is. And that one was a stay inside and close the doors, both times.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting because like here it'd be like it's storm related almost certainly, right? It's either tsunami warning if you're on a coastal state, or it's tornado warnings. So
I think
I
we
was
have
in-
one for a storm too, but that I've never heard of that being used.
sure.
I was in Boulder when the Boulder floods happened, and the apartments I was in was really close to the creek that was flooding and shutting down the entire city. And the sirens were very close by and very loud.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So finishing this out, he let out 12 painfully loud barks and then stopped. My ears rang in the sudden silence that followed. So more ears ringing, explosions, dogs, just the whole thing. It's amazing you're not deaf. Yeah. Nice. All right. So he basically gets everybody stacked up and says, guess what? We're leaving. There's actually some really cool description. I guess I didn't include it here, but as soon as he's done with his 12 barks, basically it's like an army barracks in the entire apartment building, right? Everybody gets out and hits the deck simultaneously, and then you can hear the panic start as everybody realizes like, oh shit, the building seems like it's on fire. So you hear parents scooping up their kids and kids being upset that they're awake, and the parents are upset and all of this other stuff. And so the hallway gets crazy busy as well. So Dresden sticks his head out, takes, note of the situation, realizes they're probably safe enough now because there's witnesses, even if the bad guy's still out there, right? And he wants to try and see if he can catch them because he definitely felt something was in the hallway. He gets everybody stacked up, and it's like I don't remember the order. It doesn't matter, but like Anna's holding on to to like Dresden, Elaine's holding on to Mouse, something like that, and they're all going down, right? As they go down, they get to a point where smoke is coming up, the stairwell, and that's a big bad deal. And also sets off Dresden because more people die from the smoke than the fire. Elaine's super badass though. Yeah, I swear I had this one, but maybe it happens after. But basically he has Elaine go stop the smoke, and she's able to put up a barrier, and then everybody gets past. So I do have the after part, and I think that's where she explains the spell, which is what I was looking for. But then we were through the smoke. The fire had begun 3 floors below Anna's apartment, and the fire door to that floor was simply missing from its hinges. Black smoke roiled thickly out of the hall beyond it. We had made it down through the smoke, but there were 4 floors above ours, and the smoke was being drawn up the stairs like they were an enormous chimney. The people still above us would be blinded by it, unable. Okay, so this is where he tells her. So Elaine, I choked out. Got it. She called back, coughing, and then she was beside the doorway, black smoke trying to envelop her. She extended her right hand in a gesture that somehow managed to be imperious, and the smoke abruptly vanished. Well, not exactly. There was a faint shimmer of light over the open doorway, and on the other side of it, the smoke roiled and billowed as if pressing against glass. The acoustics of the stairway altered, and the chewing roar of fire suddenly muted, the sound of footsteps and panting people becoming louder. Elaine examined the field over the doorway for a moment, nodded once, and then turned to catch up with us, her manner brisk and businesslike. You need to stay and let anyone through? I asked. Mouse leaned against my legs, clearly afraid and eager to leave the building. She held a hand up to silence me. After a moment, she said, no. Permeable to the living. Concentrating. We have a minute, maybe 2. Permeable? Holy crap. I could never have managed that on the fly, but then Elaine was always more skilled than me when it came to complex stuff. Right, I said. I took her hand, plopped it down on Anna's shoulder, and said, move, come on. So, I mean, that's a pretty freaking cool spell, because it's like, hopefully those people evacuated first and whatever, but if not, firefighters got to go in there and find them, or if there are people that somehow get clear of the smoke, they got to run out of the building, because definitely up to that scene, it's like, hopefully those people make it, so anyway.
Yeah, and she has been used this time as doing a barrier. That's what also she did in Summer Night and way back when they were kids, right? So she has some amount of skill with doing barriers.
So that's her special.
Maybe, but she also had the
I think like Harry, she's
chain thing and Reiki and stuff, and so she might be dabbling in a lot of different stuff.
I think like Harry, she's kind of like very good at the whole energy manipulation thing.
Sure,
it's
worth saying she's a wizard, and it's established that the difference between wizards and sorcerers is their versatility. Still, in a similar way as gets conveyed through D&D, right? She can have a bunch of different disciplines, but like Harry can do a veil. He fucking sucks at it comparatively to both Elaine and Molly, but he can do a veil, right? And so I'm just curious.
Might be able to only do a veil, but really good veils.
Maybe, yeah.
It could be that Elaine has a talent towards thresholds or boundaries in general ways, and so the sleep spell that can permeate through thresholds, but that way.
Maybe. Yeah. Because like Dresden's thing, even though he's known for his fire magic, his thing is thaumaturgy, right? So that's what's kind of interesting. And he's got a lot of metaphysical mass, big battery, that sort of thing. And so it's like Elaine gets commented that she's probably like 80 or 90% as strong as Harry, but she makes up for it in grace. Like that's his words, a couple of different places. And so she's definitely more talented, but I was just curious, like if this is her thing, whereas like Molly's thing is illusions, type of thing. And, listens to wind is, like healing magic, and Ramirez is entropy magic and, stuff like that. So just curious, but all right. People came hustling out of the building, all coughing. Someone outside the building or with a cell phone must have called in the fire, because an impressive number of emergency vehicle sirens were drawing nigh. The escapees fled across the street for the most part, getting to what seemed a safe distance and turning back to look at their homes. They were in various states of, I'm not even going to pronounce that word, dishevelment, basically, including one rather generously appointed young lady wearing a set of red satin sheets and dangling a pair of 6-inch heels from one hand. I mean, this is important visual stuff. We have to have this in here, right? So
she grabbed the $1,000 shoes on her way out.
obviously, like the shoes make the woman or something. I don't know. So
where's the guy with his bin full of magic cards? That's what I would be grabbing on my way. I don't think that's what the.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. The young man with her, with a red silk bathrobe belted kilt-like around his waist, looked understandably frustrated. I noticed only because, as a professional investigator, I've trained myself to be a keen observer. That's why, as I looked around the rest of the crowd to see if red satin sheets and spike heels were becoming a new fad, and if maybe I should have some on hand just in case, I saw the tall man in the gray cloak. He was shadowed by the headlights of fire trucks coming down the street toward us, but I saw the sway of the gray cloak. As if he'd sensed my attention, he turned. I got nothing useful out of his silhouette for identifying him. I guess the gray cloaked man didn't know that. He froze for a full second facing me and turned and sprinted around the corner. Mouse, I snapped, stay with Anna. I took off after Grey Cloak. So Harry thinking out loud while he's running. Some pretty good scenes here because he's being smart. Again, one of these scenes, like Harry's kind of starting to become intelligent. We'll get some of that up through this book. Then he stops asking like what a starborn is. So but yeah, there's a lot of inner monologue and everything. So it's like, do we want him to be explaining this while he's running, or do we want him to explain this to like Elaine Murphy or Thomas later, that sort of thing? But maybe we can do like a voiceover while he's in the action and whatever. But let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's my other note. Basically, so he's like, okay, so I'm Grey Cloak. I want to gack Anna Ash, so I start a fire. No, wait. So I use one of the incendiary devices, like the one in Murphy's Saturn, put it on a kitchen timer a couple of floors below Anna's place, cut the building's power, phones, and alarms, and set the whole shebang on fire. Boom. Then I wait outside Anna's door for her to emerge in a panic so that I can murder her, leave, and let the evidence burn in the subsequent inferno. Now it all looks like an accident, only I don't expect Anna to have a pair of world-class wizards on hand, and I sure as hell never saw Mouse coming. The dog barks, and all of a sudden the hall is full of people who can witness the murder, and there's no way to make it look accidental. Someone is almost certain to contact the authorities and send in the whirling lights within a few moments, and there goes my whole evening. No use trying to complete a subtle hit now, so what do? I don't want attention, that's for sure, or I wouldn't be trying so hard to make this murder look like an accident. I'm cautious, smart, and patient, or I wouldn't have gotten away with it in 4 other cities. I do what a smart predator does when a stock goes sour. I bug out. I've got a car nearby, a getaway vehicle, and then Grey Cloak reached the end of the alley, turned left with me about 20 feet behind him. Then he rounded a corner and sprinted into a parking garage. I did not follow him. See, since I'm such a competent and methodical killer, I assume the worst, that anyone in pursuit will display just as much intelligence and resourcefulness. So what I do is I pull the chase into a parking garage where there's lots of angles that will break line of sight. But my getaway car isn't parked in there. There's no way I'm going to wait around to pay an attendant, and smashing my way out would attract just the kind of attention I'm trying to avoid. The plan is to lose a pursuer in the ample shadows, ramps, doorways, and park cars in the maze of the garage and go to my car once I've given him the slip. I kept sprinting down the street and rounded a corner. Then I stopped, crouched and ready to continue running. The far side of the garage had no parking places, nor did the alley. So Grey Cloak's car had to be either on the street in front of the garage or on the street along its side. From that corner, I could watch both. I hunkered down beside a city trash can and hoped that I was as clever as I seemed to think I was. I was pretty sure it would have been at best stupid and at worst lethal to pursue Grey Cloak into the dark of the parking garage. I might have one hell of a punch, but I was as fragile as the next person, and cornering Grey Cloak might draw out the savagery of desperation. If I slipped up and he got too close to me, he might drop me like a pair of dirty socks. Always assuming, of course, that he wasn't an actual warden, in which case he might well hit me with lightning or fire any other any number of other nasty attacks of choice. That was a thought I found more than a little comfortable, really. I'd spent most of my adult life living in fear of the council's wardens. They'd been my persecutors, my personal furies, and despite the fact that I had become one, I felt almost childish glee in the notion that a warden might be my bad guy. It would give me a perfect opportunity to lay out some long-deserved payback with perfect justification. Unless, of course, it was a warden doing it under orders. Once upon a time, I'd have told you that was impossible, blah, blah, blah. All right, so more inner monologue. It didn't seem reasonable to think that a legitimate warden could have sunk to such measures, or that Captain Lucio, the warden's commander, would condone it, but I have gotten used to being disappointed in the honor and sincerity of the council in general, and the wardens in particular. So he's still sitting there musing, thinking about it and everything, when a shadowy figure vaulted from the roof of the parking garage and dropped 6 stories to the ground, landing on the sidewalk in a crouch. Greycloak was still for a second, maybe listening, and then rose and began to walk quickly but calmly toward the street and the cars parked along it. I blinked. Son of a gun. I was right. So anyway, so he waits there. Greycloak gets into like a sedan or something like that, and Harry uses Fozari and then Tractus basically to pull a little paint chip off of the car for tracking it for later, because engage wizard brain. So instead of chasing him and everything like that, he goes all the way back to his apartment to use Little Chicago for like the second time that we've ever seen him do it. And, less likely to explode this time. So we get
it kind of fries.
Well, yes, but that wasn't his fault either. So in fact, that
Little
was kind
Chicago
of
got blown up and it wasn't my fault.
Yes, it was kind of the design goal. So, so there's that. But get a big old description of his lab again, which is cool. But some of the new additions are like, now there's a desk in there that Molly is using for studies, and she's learning how to make potions. So the desk is full of Bunsen burners and stuff like that. So his lab is even more cramped than what we've seen before. And then the table in the middle of the room that had once been my work area, no longer. Now it was wholly occupied by Little Chicago. So he wakes up Bob while they're getting prepped and everything like that. They have a discussion about the nature of foo dogs, and that the foo dog is like actually a creature that spawns scions of other dogs, and those are usually the temple dogs. So Mouse is like half divine potentially, depending on the lore and everything like that. So
any dog is divine.
Well, sure. All good dogs go to heaven, and Mouse is no different. So
Mouse is a good boy.
Right.
That's why he gets a lot of treats.
Yes. That's why he's a chunky little dude. So
not little.
He's a baby. So
yeah.
All right. So Dresden sits down and meditates just there on the lab, getting everything together for the spell. Something else that he's gotten a whole lot better at in the last year or so, because he's been teaching his apprentice. I think there's some inner monologue about, there's something about, you can only advance your skills so far learning. And then at that point, you got to start teaching people what you know. And that is what pushes masters, even further. That sort of thing. And it must be true because, a year ago, he couldn't have meditated and gotten into, his game space this fast. Now he did it in, a few minutes, it's like 5, 10, 15 minutes, something like that, as opposed to like it took him hours, previously. So he casts his spell. We get the incantation, whatever. Felt my senses blur for a moment, and then Little Chicago rushed toward me, its buildings growing until I stood upon the street outside the now life-size pewter replica of my apartment building. I took a moment to look around. It looked like Chicago. Flickers of motion surrounded me. Faint outlines of leaves stirred in the pewter trees, ghostly images of the real-world leaves on their trees of the actual Chicago. Faint lights emanated from blank pewter window panes. Ghostly cars whispered by on the streets. I could hear the muted sounds of the city, catching the barest hints of sense on the air. Unnervingly, I could look up and see myself, my actual physical body, towering over the model city like Godzilla's hyperthyroid cousin, which is just going to be so fun for special effects, right? Because throughout this scene, he looks back at himself a bunch of times, So the sky over Little Chicago held twinkling lights, the dim glows of the lab's candles and Bob's eye lights, all too large to be stars. I just want to see like Bob looking around, just being nightmare fuel of like this, gigantic 5-story skull with its orange eye lights watching what he's doing, Yep. So I held up the matchbox, my will surging down my arm. It touched a little flake of paint, which erupted into viridian light and rose into the air above my hand, hovered for a moment, then streaked off to the north like a miniature comet. My own flesh dissolved into flickering silver light, and I felt myself rush after the energy of the seeking spell, streaking through the ghostly images of Chicago's nightlife in the model all around me, one more insubstantial shade among thousands. The seeking spell came to a rest a block and a half south of Goody Square Park, a little slice of green the city managed to squeeze in amidst a bunch of architecture. The brilliant mote of light settled down onto a ghostly image of a moving car, and the image suddenly became solid and visible. So basically, he parks out in front of this park. Passenger with a Midwestern accent, deeper tone than Gray Cloak's. He gets in the car, lights a cigarette. We're doing the whole smoking man thing with Dresden, Ghost Dresden in the back, right? Or I think he's like just outside the car, just kind of like listening to them. But it turns out through the course of this conversation that whoever the smoking man is has tangled with Dresden before and lived. And Dresden doesn't like to admit it, but that's a very small list of suspects. So they talk about the Scavis. They talk about, their tastes running somewhat parallel in some ways. Gray Cloak mentions the Circle, which Dresden is like, hey, could this be my Black Council that, totally doesn't exist and everything? And then there's not a lot of information here to draw the line, but the smoking man has been talking to somebody else, and the implication here is that he might be talking to or about Thomas, and that sort of thing. Harry doesn't put all of this together currently. It's just something for the notes. Make sure at least the tones and the implications are there, because Harry messes this one up in a couple of key ways, right? He gets it wrong. Murphy's there to catch him and point him in the right direction, everything like that. But from there, basically, Gray Cloak gets out of the car, goes across the street and into like a little boarded off little tunnel. And Dresden needs to go follow and everything like that. Yeah, it's probably about time to take a break. Just because like this is going to get into the whole following him into his spider hole and all of that stuff. But we can leave it on the suspense of like he goes into the tunnel and Harry's like, oh man, I hope it's not warded or has a threshold or something, because that'll totally stop me. But it doesn't. And then, we'll go from there next time. So.
Meanwhile, where you can go is to patreon.com/brokenjars, and then you can support us and get access to our Discord. You can catch us live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And we also have a website, brokenjars.xyz. Leave a comment, subscribe, all that good jazz on YouTube.
Alrighty.
I'm just trying to get better segues, but I think that was a good one, right? That was a good one.
I'll tell you where you can go. Usually not a good segue, but next week we're continuing season 2 of Pushing Daisies.
Yep, that's the plan.
2 weeks we'll be back here talking about more White Knight. So.
Yep, and then you get to find out what happens in the tunnel.